Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 28. Reflecting on our physical death and its importance. Part of this presentation has been shared previously with verse 27, but I thought to go into more details, and in its own right, we cover verse 28 in slightly more detail. These are the references, and particularly the life of the hereafter. What does the Quran say? It will be useful to go through it because there are far more details covered on this aspect, which we are going to cover today. This is our contact in case there is any query, question regarding this presentation or any of our previous presentations. Human life at the level of the self, that is I, is one continuity. Physical death only defines the end of the first phase. Who says so? Allah, who created the universe and the earth to launch this program of His and created man with choice and intent to become part of this program. The Quran describes the outline of that program, inviting man to willingly make a choice to become part of this program of Allah. So beginning to the end, once we go through the Quran, it puts forward choice before us, that either you want to live a life under the man-made system in which the human self-development does not enter, while if you go through the Quran and use the program which Allah has put forward for man, then you will see that human self-development is part of this program. If man decides to become the companion of Allah in this program of his, then physical death will define the end of the first phase of this program and will hand him over, that is the human self, developed using the guidance of the Quran, onto the next phase of his life called the life of the hereafter. So Quran says that death is just the first phase of your physical existence on this planet Earth. And this will pass it on to your next phase of life. And another important point in the case of hereafter is that the way Akhirat Quran defines is that it is a changeover from one aspect of life to another, and the other aspect of life should be different from the previous one. There will be no further death for the developed self in the next stage, i.e. the life of the hereafter, and the self will continue its further development in this next phase of its life. And this is a very powerful statement by the Quran, that there will be no death in the next life, which means that this physical death has a great significance in our life, and we need to understand it right here using the Quran. And then, of course, it is our choice whether we want to change our life and come to the guidance of the Quran and develop ourselves. And hopefully that point will become clear once we go through this presentation together. Next, we will share some aspects of this journey of ours to reflect on physical death as a deadline in this worldly life. And I put down over here as a deadline because whenever, even in the man-made system, when we have a deadline for a project, we know how much time we have, and then we try our best to meet that deadline. And sometimes we have to meet that deadline, otherwise there are consequences for that, particularly if the projects are extremely expensive and these have certain bearing on human life. Next slide is worldly life via Quran linked to the life in the hereafter. Over here, I have shown a seed which is growing. And then just like the growth of a seed, we also appear in the physical world. And then we have children. Through choice, we acquire Eimaan plus solid deeds, create our seed of a new life. And the Quran says that you should create your own seed, your own life, once you're born biologically. Because the first, we do not have a choice in coming to this life biologically. Parents make a choice and then we land up in this world. But then Quran says, here is the guidance for you so that you can avail your own, make your own choice in this life. So essentially, without the Quran, we do not have another choice. We are forced or bound to live under the man-made system. And once Quran comes into it, then it presents another choice, that is the system of deen. And it says that if you want a system of deen which is different, rather it is the opposite of man-made system, then you should work on this program and see how the laws of Allah will help you to establish this system. Death takes us into the life of the hereafter. The seed of the self which we bring into this life should be compatible with the environment of Deen of Allah. Characteristics explained by the Quran, for example, those who follow the path of the Quran, they become mu'mineen, muslimin, sadiqeen, muttaqeen, muhsineen, dakireen, qaniteen, sabirin, salihin. So these are various facets of these people who come to the guidance of the Quran, and as a result, they create a new life within themselves. Creative life through permanent values plus divine attributes. And we have covered these permanent values, some of these permanent values, as well as divine attributes in some detail previously. Next slide is the verse 228, human death and its significance. The Quran says, كَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَكُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا فَأَحْيَاكُمْ ثُمَّ يُمِيتُكُمْ ثُمَّ يُحْيِيكُمْ ثُمَّ إِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. Say to these people whose path of life is noted above, that on the basis of what logic do you reject the law of Allah? And the Quran uses two terms very frequently. One is mu'min, those who accept the guidance of the Quran and acquire that peace of mind, and because they understand the laws of Allah which are applicable to their self. And those who reject the message of the Quran and live a life of kufr. So kufr is not some kind of a bad word. It is related to the state of human self-development. Whereas your own existence is living evidence of your own existence. So Quran over here says that how can you deny this, that you are a fact. You live in this world. The universe around you is also a fact. It is not an illusion. You know that you exist, and you also know Earth exists, and the universe around us exists, and also other human beings exist. Reflect on this from any angle. You will have to acknowledge this reality that there existed a moment in time when you were no entity to be even mentioned. And this is another very interesting verse. We can have a look on this. But what Quran is saying is that there was a moment in time in your life when you did not exist. In fact, once we start getting consciousness, that is, we become aware of our own self after passing through the initial childhood, then we know that we exist. Then life appeared in you. It is glaringly obvious that this life is not created by you. It is bestowed by Allah. And this is a massive fact of life we simply cannot deny. That we come to this world with certain potentials, we have intellect, we have the ability to make our choices and decisions, and then live by the consequences of those decisions. And the Quran points to all these aspects from beginning to the end. After that, when you will die according to the physical law of Allah, what then will be so difficult for Allah that He cannot make you alive again? And this is another very powerful statement of fact by the Quran, that you know that you exist, you came to this world through a biological process, then you think that who set that biological process in place on the planet Earth? And then once you die, that is physical death of yours comes, then why should it be difficult for Allah to recreate you from that self which you possessed and with which you lived this life? Hence, life does not end with death. Life continues forward. And this is an important aspect of continuity of life. In fact, we should be pleased that there is a continuity of life kept within us, rather than taking it as a negative aspect and following our own desires and suffer. The world which we see around us is chaotic and conflict-ridden because it is not following the permanent values of the Quran. And life moves forward for the sake of the law of requital. And Quran has made it very clear in verse 45, 22, that the universe is created bil haq, which means it is for constructive results, so that every nafs, and nafs means the one which possesses choice and intent, is held accountable for whatever he or she does in their life, and nobody is treated unjustly. And this is another important point that the Quran says, that be aware of your accountability and use that accountability to carry out all those deeds which will help you to bring out your best in this world. So law of requital should be used in our own favor rather than considering it as if it is something opposing us. Therefore, you cannot go outside the grip of this law. You can try thousands of times to escape it. You will have to ultimately return to it. Rather, take it like this, that every step of yours is moving towards it. So Quran makes it very clear that whatever we do in life, that impacts our self. So that means we should recognize what is our self, what is our I, and how our deeds affect ourself in its development or in its degradation. Next slide is root of life al-hayat. So over here we will go through the root of life or al-hayat, the term used in this verse. This is the root over here. He lived or became alive. He made him alive, life to give life, to shrink due to the instinct of self-preservation in living things. Also means shyness, shame, i.e. a feeling of step back a bit. So these are all meanings originating from this root. A snake is also called hayya because it moves by contracting and extending. According to Raghib, it means the faculty of sensation, the opposite of which is death. Some aspects of this root are the ability to grow in plants and animals, the faculty of feeling, thinking, intellect, and action, freedom from anxiety and sorrow, life in the hereafter and its eternal state. So life over here, physical life, also comes under this root, and the life of the hereafter also comes under this root. That life with which only the being of Allah is defined, and Allah is defined as Al-Hayyul Qayyum. And that is a very important aspect because Allah is living. And the Quran says no one gave life to Allah, but Allah gives life to others. And He not only gives life, but His laws sustain life as well. So that is why coming to the Quran is extremely important if we wish to live beyond our physical death. In fact, the concept of Allah which is given in the Quran, we will not find that concept anywhere else in any book or anywhere in any other religion. And even in sectarian Islam, that concept of Allah does not exist, which is given in the Quran. Because the concept of Allah given in the Quran is based on divine attributes, which means that by going through those attributes, we make an effort to reflect those within our own personality, and as a result, our self starts developing. Also related to giving life to dead land through the growth of vegetation. Also used in relation to the meaning of obtaining benefit. In relation to the life in the hereafter, the word hayawan has also appeared. Its weight is on full on, intensity and control, something appearing emergently, and the aspect of movement and anxiousness exists. In fact, it's worth going through this verse few times. This means that the life in the hereafter is not the continuity of this process through physical existence, that is physical laws. So life of the hereafter, what Quran is saying, is not like this physical life, but it will have a different form. Life will require a new form in this. The Quran does not call human physical life as being life. According to the Quran, the real life is the life of human eminence, in which man, in the light of Wahi, using his intellect and reasoning, keeps developing his self. And this is where the Quran helps. It says that you should acquire a new seed of life within you by following the Quran. Then you will see that the changes which come within you, and you will manifest those latent potentials which are kept within you, which simply cannot be brought out without the help of the Quran. And then you will yourself know that your outlook, your vision, your insight, everything has changed, and you will start looking at the word the way Quran wants us to look at it. Now, next slide is regarding root of death, al-maut. And this is the root of mouth. It is the opposite of life, also used metaphorically for tranquility. Anything in which movement stops, for example, stagnancy. And this stagnancy is intellectual as well as physical. That means that if we fail to bring out our latent potentials, then it is equivalent of mouth or death. Fire was extinguished, wind stopped, sleep is compared with death. And this is another very interesting verse. We should go through it few times. Just like life is not just about breathing and has many aspects, similarly death is just not stopping of breathing. For example, the Quran has said that every self will taste death, which points to the continuation of the life of the self beyond its physical death. Various kinds of death. If any land cannot grow vegetation, because the land is supposed to grow vegetation, and if it does not have that adequate fertility or for some other reason it cannot grow, for example, human beings have contaminated it, then that land becomes dead. If human beings lose feelings, become insensitive due to some circumstances or environment, the decline or ineffectualness of human intellect and consciousness, for example, people who do not use their cognitive faculties, because these cognitive faculties are provided to us to make our life prosperous, successful, and to help each other and make this world free from fear and grief. And Quran deals with these aspects repeatedly and points our direction to this aspect, that once you come to the Quranic guidance, your world will become a paradise on earth. Human life becomes overwhelmed with huzn and fear. And huzn means all kinds of grief, anxieties, the backwardness which we experience in this life. And for example, depression as well, i.e. hardships, poverty, humiliation, a life of subjugation, perpetual grief and fear. The word in 2025 represents this state for many millions of human beings. And we should keep in mind that the word of 2025 is created by pure human intellect, which is unbridled, which means it is not guided by the Quran, it is based on relative values. So here a clear line of distinction, differentiation is drawn by the Quran, that if you do not want the Quranic guidance, then you will have the word which will be full of bloodshed, chaos, confusion, conflicts. A state of stupor and craziness, animals which die without being slaughtered, also human physical death. Nations which lag behind and live under subjugation are also called dead. In the Quran, we need to see the context in which this term appears in different places. Quran is an extremely exciting study, even if one is not looking for guidance, and we can look at it from many aspects, and particularly there are laws of rise and fall of nations given in the Quran, and in the word of 2025 we can easily see that how these laws work in the human world. The next slide is further elaboration of this verse. In this verse, one evidence which Allah has provided first of all for the existence of His being is that He has bestowed life on you. It is obvious from this how much significance the creating of life holds. So Quran is saying that it is Allah who has created this life, and how can you deny it? Because you exist. So your own existence is a proof that there is a creator, and if you come to the Quran, you will come across all the aspects of this life and its importance on this planet Earth. Linguistic scholars have engaged in many detailed discussions relating to this fundamental meaning, that is this of this root, which are not of any import to us. Opposite to this is word mouth. As far as usage is concerned, this word also has numerous meanings. Fundamentally, the words hayat and mouth are also used for the physical meanings of life and death. The Quran also calls those people as being dead who are alive physically but whose human potentials have become defunct. Over here, we should pause and reflect on this statement, because if we have certain latent potentials to which the Quran points our attention, then that means if we don't come to the Quran, we will not be able to display and manifest those latent potentials in this life. And if our self development is dependent on the manifestation of those latent potentials, then we can imagine how much loss we are in, how much harm we are causing to ourselves. Because if the life is continuing beyond our death, and we need the development of those latent potentials in this life in order to qualify for the life of the hereafter. So this choice and intent which is kept within us gives us horrendous responsibility, and we should become aware of it using the Quranic light. In comparison to them, it declares those human beings as alive who, by using their intellect and consciousness, are treading on the path defined by Allah. It also calls those nations dead which are in a state of decline. If there is any potential or ability remaining in them to achieve resurrection, then they can achieve life again by acting on the divine laws. And after the physical death of man, the next life is also termed as hayat. This is that life in the hereafter which is part of Eimaan. Next is human self's life is not cyclic. And over here I have drawn a schematic which should help to understand that life is a straight line and it is not cyclic. It is not like animals who are born and then they are utilized, for example, sheep and goat and other animals, and then they die and then more are born through a biological process. Human beings, once they are born, they are dead. They simply cannot come back. Others will come back. That is, other children will come back. But the self which they have developed, the self which they have acquired, simply cannot be passed on to others. And the very simple example is if somebody has become a doctor, then we simply cannot pass on that qualification to our children. The children will come with a blank slate. So whatever one has become, that becomes his own entity. It cannot be subdivided. So integrity of human self is absolute, and it simply cannot be divided into some kind of constituents. Birth of a child, it grows physically, has a raw self. So a child comes with a raw self, with a plain slate, and then as he or she lives their life under the man-made system, for example, at present, then they will grow their own self. And if they are brought up under the system of deen, where the permanent values are in place, then their self will be different. So Quran is asking that even under the man-made system, you can make an effort to develop yourself on those lines, on using that guidance which is given in the Quran, and you will know that your own eminence and loftiness has increased. We die and more children are born, all physical parts left in the earth. And we can see that. So the only route to come back to this life is through parents. And since we have a self, that means if once we die, our physical body remains behind, I goes forward. So anything mine will remain behind. My house, my children, my wife, my husband, my car, everything will be left behind. Only I will go forward, which defines me. Life of the hereafter begins once we die. Acquiring new self with new life, new outlook. So that should be our aim, and for that the Quran helps us. And Quran says, وَقَالُوا مَا هِيَ إِلَّا حَيَاتُنَا الدُّنْيَا نَمُوتُ وَنَحْيَا وَمَا يُهْلِكُنَا إِلَّا الدَّهْرُ وَمَا لَهُمْ بِذَلِكَ مِنْ عِلْمٍ إِنْ هُمْ إِلَّا يَظُنُّونَ. And they say, what is there but our life of this world? We shall die and we live, and nothing but time can destroy us. And this is the state of most of the human beings in the world without the guidance of the Quran, because they think this life is meaningless. Even those who are in the religious domain, do not have that precise concept of Allah which is given in the Quran. But of that they have no knowledge, they do zan. And zan over here means being very conjectural, being in suspicion, in doubts, and never be certain that what will happen beyond death and what is the purpose of our life. Quran makes it very black and white. It says that everything in this world is precise and follows certain scales and laws. There is nothing random in it, there is nothing by chance in it. And then Quran says, إِلَيْهِ مَرْجِعُكُمْ جَمِيعًا وَعْدَ اللَّهِ حَقًّا إِنَّهُ يَبْدَأُ الْخَلْقَ ثُمَّ يُعِيدُهُ لِيَجْزِيَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ بِالْقِسْطِ. To him will be your return, all of you. So the Quran says that death simply you cannot avoid, and then there is a next stage of life where you will find what you have done in this life and its results, because that is what you have become. Allah is not going to give you a paradise or hell. You will earn your own paradise and hell according to what you have done in this world and how your self-development has taken place. And this is where the Quran is unique. It puts factually all aspects of our life and its importance before us. It tells us that Allah exists. You like it or don't like it, He exists. And the concept of Allah given in the Quran is a factual one. Similarly, it says that there is a life in the hereafter because you have a self. You are not just defined by your body, you have a self as well, which is very metacognitive, and you make your own choices and intent, and you also know your choices and intent in this life have consequences. You have a choice to follow course A or B, but you do not have a choice that you follow course A and you get the results of B. The promise of Allah is haq. It is He who begins creation and repeats it, that He may reward with justice those who have Eimaan and do salih deeds. And this is important to understand, that since whatever we do, it has impact on ourselves, hence we simply cannot avoid the effects of our decision making. Next is acquiring Eimaan in the continuity of human life. In this verse, Allah has put forward the concept of the continuity of our life and pointed to the event of physical death as a permanent signpost beyond which a new phase of our life commences. For this, the Quran has metaphorically compared death to be like our sleep, like temporary death. We essentially experience death every day, with the difference that we expect to become awake after sleep. And this is a great verse which points to this fact that at night we go to sleep because we are using our brain to carry out our work during daytime. That is, we all decision making is through our brain, our mind. Whereas our eye becomes suspended, our consciousness becomes suspended during night because our brain is in a rest mode. So essentially we are experiencing temporary death every night. Since we know that we are going to rise up again next morning, so that we do not have fear. But a lot of people die in their death as well. So that means that once the body disappears, our self will get another level of consciousness in the hereafter. So death is just like sleep. In order to reach that level of certainty in the life after death, the Quran puts forward the proposition of Eimaan plus salih deeds, and to strive together under one lofty aim of establishing the system of Deen by becoming the companions of Allah. Even when working collectively as individuals while maintaining ourselves unity and integrity, we willingly make efforts to contribute to the collective effort. Understanding the self-development related to this striving holds the key to the elimination of fear of death and creates the feeling of high expectation, i.e., glad tidings of a higher life in the company of Mu'mineen. We should keep in mind that the next life is also a collective progress of those who have learned to unite their hearts here in this phase of life. So this is an important aspect which continuously Quran puts forward before us, that initially you should come to the Quran after you are looking for guidance. If you're not looking for guidance, even if you go through the Quran repeatedly, you will not pick up the essentials. Because we know that unless we are looking for something, we are not going to benefit from it. Hence, Quran says that if you're looking for guidance, then you will see that the Quran will start making sense from beginning to the end. And then once you have acquired some kind of Iman, for example, in verse Surah Al-Baqarah, that is 2256, Quran says that you should reject the man-made system and its values and then come to Allah and have Iman in Allah. Then that Iman's constituents are explained in verse 2, 177 and other parts of the Quran as well. So what Quran is saying is that you should acquire firm conviction in Allah, that is in the Quran, and then see and then make a choice that whether you want to work as a companion of Allah, for example, in verse 257 of Surah Al-Baqarah, that is chapter 2. So all these aspects need that we look through them over a period of time. It is not about saying that I have belief in Allah or belief in the Quran and then you have acquired Iman. Quran says that the acquisition of Iman is a fairly long period of time. It takes few years before we develop that conviction which the Quran is asking us to develop. And then as a result of this Iman, we are inclined to find out those who also have Iman, because unless people come together, unite their hearts, work together over a period of time, they cannot benefit from the study of the Quran and for the development of their own self. We have gone through these aspects in some of our previous presentations. According to the Quranic guidance, the acquisition of Iman is a real tangible change within our outlook, vision, and view of our individual and collective life in the physical world. There are certain actions and deeds which tangibly manifest from us in the physical world on a continuous basis. If there is no change experienced by us internally and externally by applying the Quranic criterion, then we need to review the state of our Iman and discuss with others who we think have grasped it. This is an important aspect because we know about our life, which before coming to the Quran, what kind of a life we were living. And once we come to the Quran and acquire Iman and then make a decision that this guidance is for me, then we will see that our outlook will start changing. And then we start doing solid deeds which bring out our best, all those latent potentials. So without Iman, there are no solid deeds. And we should keep in mind that only through Iman in the Quran, the way it has explained, the deeds which we do, the path we follow, that becomes a salih path, and that then brings us together with those who are also on this path. Giving new life to the self needs the right priorities. Acquiring Quranic life is an evolutionary process of coming together for the cause of Allah. And there is I've put down this verse over here, and it is very illuminating in many aspects, because once we have adopted this path, then Quran says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu stajibu lillahi walirrasuli iza da'akum lima yuhyikum wa'lamu anna Allaha yahulu bainal mar'i wa qalbihi wa annahu ilayhi tusharun. O Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, that is who have made a decision to accept Iman and then come together, give your response to Allah and His Messenger. And over here we can see that Allah and Messenger then become the center of the divine system. When He calls you to that which will give you life, and this is a beautiful part of it, that all these people, that is Mu'mineen, were already living. They had a physical life, but Quran over here says, which will give you life. So that means this is a different life. It is a new vision. It is a new outlook. This is a new consciousness towards Allah and His Messenger are inviting. And Allah over here will means the Quran and the Messenger has already accepted Iman and is already following this path. And know that Allah comes in between a man and his heart. Becoming aware of our own thoughts is part of this new life. And this is a beautiful part of it, which is based on fact and points to the human psyche, that once you come to this path of Allah, which is put forward by the Quran, and once you have acquired this new life, then you will become very conscious, you will become aware of your own thoughts within your mind, that if there are any doubts and suspicions and conjectures arriving, you will be able to deal with them in the light of the Quran. And that it is He to whom you shall be gathered, which means وَأَنَّهُ عَلَيْهِ تُحْشَرُونَ, that every act of yours, every thought of yours will have consequences. And remember that you have to work for that system. All the problems we have in the world are because it is human hands which create these problems. Wherever there is a problem in the world, we will see that there is a human hand behind it. And wherever there is a solution, there is a human hand behind it. So this word has been placed at the disposal of human beings. So Quran over here is giving us another option, that if you are not happy with the man-made system, here is an option. This new life will put pressure on setting priorities right in life. Despite attraction for biological and material affinities which are kept within us, striving on the path of Allah, that is the system of Deen, will help develop and strengthen the self. So Quran says that you should get maximum benefits from the physical conveniences of life, but share them together and bring them under the domain of the permanent values, so that you share them rather than creating conflicts with each other. قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ آبَاؤُكُمْ وَأَبْنَاؤُكُمْ وَإِخْوَانُكُمْ وَأَزْوَاجُكُمْ وَعَشِيرَتُكُمْ وَأَمْوَالٌ اقْتَرَفْتُمُوهَا وَتِجَارَةٌ تَخْشَوْنَ كَسَادَهَا وَمَسَاكِنُ تَرْضَوْنَهَا أَحَبَّ عَلَيْكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَجِهَادٍ فِي سَبِيلِهِ فَتَرَبَّصُوا حَتَّى يَأْتِيَ اللَّهُ بِأَمْرِهِ وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الْفَاسِقِينَ. And Quran is telling us in this verse that if you have made a decision to become a Mu'min and then come together, then you should strive towards establishing the system of Deen. And if you do not, and your priorities are still material successes and prosperities in life, and you're not doing anything for yourself, then remember, just saying few words by your mouth is not going to help you. Say, if it be that your fathers, your sons, your brothers, your mates, your kindred, the wealth that you have gained, the commerce in which you fear a decline, or the dwellings in which you delight, are dearer to you than Allah and His Messenger, and the striving in His cause, then wait until Allah brings about His Amr, because then Allah's law will take care of it, and there will be problems in the world. And Allah guides not fasiqeen. And fasiq means that Allah has put forward a certain pattern for us as human beings for a moment, and if we go outside that mold, which is guided by Allah's attributes as well as the permanent values, then we will fail to achieve that purpose of our life, which is explained in the Quran, and which means that we can live our life over here, but once we die, there will be nothing for us in the hereafter, as we would not have acquired that self, that developed self, which becomes eligible for the life of the hereafter. So it is a very serious matter for us if we pause and reflect. And particularly pioneers like us have to look through it, because if we are happy with the world of 2025 and the world created by human mind and hands, then Quran is not really for us. Quran is for those who are willing to tread on this path by becoming the companion of Allah as directed by the Quran. Now the next slide is, we live in a very dark world. Only the Quran can help us to come out of it. I should also make it clear that after studying the Quran, we will see that it is not a religion. It is a system. It is Deen. It is an alternative system to the man-made system. And it is asking us who wish to acquire Eimaan and those who are not happy with the man-made world, that Allah is there through this Quran to help you. And even if Allah is not visible, that does not mean that His laws don't work. So try to understand Allah's system given in the Quran at your self's level. And self over here means that is our I. That is, I know I've got a strong sense of identity which does not change as I live my life. And everything around that I is the consciousness, that decision making, that memory, those emotions, that intellectual force which we have, and of course our body as well. All those define ourselves. And we should be able to understand it by using the Quran. So Quran essentially deals with the human psyche. And there are verses which point to this aspect in the Quran. It is not an individual journey, but starts from each one of us and then helps to bring together the hearts of these individuals. And Quran says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha wa kunu ma'as sadiqeen. O Jamaat Mu'mineen, just see all these verses which address collectively Mu'mineen, those are related to the system of deen. And that is how we should study the Quran. So unless we come together, then these verses will not become applicable. In order to make those applicable to us, we have to come together, unite our hearts, and then move forward. And of course, the first stage is to get educated and trained and acquire a developed self. Fear Allah, and over here, Attakullah we know means to avoid the pitfalls of life. Under the man-made system, we know how many pitfalls of life are there. So Quran is asking us to become aware of them and to live our life in a state of becoming not fearful and not suffering any grief and understanding the kind of human psyche we need in order to work as companion of Allah. And be with those who are sadiqeen, which means who are convinced of the Quranic realities being based on truth. Next is this commitment with Allah is not of one day or 1 month or 1 year or a few years here and there. Very important to understand this path needs patience and steadfastness and 100% commitment. Not 90%, not 80%, not 50%, 100% commitment. And we can figure it out from the Quran whether our commitment is 100% or not. It is a total commitment to Allah. And that is why Quran, for example, in Surah Tawbah says that you should make a covenant with Allah and sell your life as well as your possessions in His cause and then see whether Allah helps you or not. So it is a path which is signposted by the Quran. It is not otherworldly. Right in this life, as we live our life, we will see all the signs which will appear first within ourselves, then coming together, and then in the outer world. It is a commitment for the rest of our life, and of course, there are pleasures and joys which are associated with that. Because human beings, once they are convinced of some path and they have created a desire for that and a need for that, then once desire and need is created, then they don't give up because they understand that it is for their own benefits. Why? And Quran says, فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِهِمْ لَوْ أَنْفَقْتَ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا مَا أَلَّفْتَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِهِمْ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ أَلَّفَ بَيْنَهُمْ إِنَّهُ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. Very powerful verse based on evidence. And moreover, He, that is Allah, has placed affection between their hearts, nor if you had spent all that is in the earth, could you have produced that affection. But Allah has done it, for He is Aziz and Hakim. So what Allah is saying is that once you follow this path, come together, just like once you take paracetamol, the headache disappears. So over here, Quran says all your psychological issues will disappear. You will have a very lofty, high aim in your life to become eminent. And Quran over here says Aziz means power and Hakim means that kind of a wisdom where you understand the higher purpose of life. And Quran always tells us that wherever there are laws, Quran tells us what is the purpose of that law, what effects it will have on yourself as well as on the world, on the system of deen itself. So by following this path, we also become Aziz and Hakim. That is, we understand through these divine attributes that we have acquired power and we have also understood the purpose and the way we should apply that power. This power is not a power of tyranny and coercion which we see in the human world, but this power is utilized and applied by following the permanent values of the Quran, for which we need to be Hakim. Since death is an immutable deadline for our stay on this planet, hence Quran says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatihi wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. O those who have accepted Eimaan, again it is collective tense, be muttaqeen, that is learn to avoid the pitfalls of your life as is noted by Allah, and do not aim to die except in the state of Islam. So this means that we have to acquire that conviction where we say that I am not going to change this path of my life because this is for me. I have made a choice and I will stay with those who are also on this path. And we will keep striving on this path till we establish the system of deen, and once the system is established, then to strengthen it so that mankind does not suffer under the man-made systems. This path illuminated by the Quran is in the company of Allah. وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَ نَفَقَاتًا صَغِيرَةً وَلَا كَبِيرَةً وَلَا يَقْطَعُونَ وَادِيًا إِلَّا كُتِبَ لَهُمْ لِيَجْزِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنَ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Nor could they make available anything small or big, nor cut across a valley, but the deed is inscribed to their credit, that Allah required their deed with the best. So Quran says that once you follow this path, then you will not be disappointed. Rather, this will be a path full of glad tidings. Initially, the results may not appear because that is a stage of self-development. That is quietly taking place within your own self. Your outlook is changing. You are working together. But as you work on this path and make your possessions, the spare possessions, available to strengthen this Jamaat, this forum, this people are coming together, and then you will see that gradually results will start appearing in the outer world over a period of few years. Physical death, becoming conscious of it. So this is part of our self-development. Every human being entering the world through a biological process has a physical body, and this physical body has a finite time to live. That which is called death defines the end of its journey in this world. Being conscious of this fact is part of the development process of the human self. Hence, death, which is universal, is a permanent value. The Quran factually noted this by saying, Kullu nafsin zaikatul maut. Every self, that is nafs, will taste death. It can also be experiencing death. So each one of us, Quran says, should reach that stage of self-development where they look forward to this death as the end of the first phase of life, and should look at their self-development that I did my best over here, individually as well as collectively, if the system of deen is not established. Because once the system of deen is established through this Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, then that system becomes the biggest signpost of their successful striving on this path. There is an important aspect noted here, i.e., every self should develop to that level of eminence where not only should the fear of death disappear, but through Eimaan and Salih deeds, a strong expectation should build up for the next phase of life. So there should be a pleasure towards it if we have acquired the developed self, and there should be an excitement that there is another world of Allah awaiting us. Because if we have qualified ourselves right here, about which we know that we have done it to the best of our ability, even within the man-made system, we start living at a higher pedestal of life and at a higher level of understanding what is going on in the world, and then striving together. In fact, once the hearts are united with those who are already on this path, that becomes a tangible sign of having a developed self. Man amila salihan min zakarim aw unsa wa huwa mu'minun fala nuhyiyannahu hayatan tayyibatan. I've quoted part of this verse because over here again the word hayat has appeared. So what Quran is saying is that whoever does salih deed, that is brings out their best on this path to the best of their ability within the constraints or even of the man-made system, whether that is a man or woman. See the equality to which the Quran is pointing to us, that man and woman are equal because both possess the same self. Wahuwa mu'minun, but they must have acquired Eimaan. And Eiman's root is from Aman, that is peace. So they have understood that what is the purpose of their life. So they have added meaning to their life by using the Quran, and Quran says, فَلَا نُحِيَّنَّهُ, then they will be given that life. And what will be that life? Hayatan tayyibatan. Their life will become very positive. They will understand that they are fulfilling the purpose of their creation because they have created a new self. The creation of a new self, that new outlook, that new vision using the Quran means that we have understood the purpose of our life, and that seed now is growing right in this world, and then this seed will go on to the next life and grow over there. The next part of the verse, 3185 states, وَإِنَّمَا تُوَفَّوْنَ أَجُورَكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ فَمَنْ زُحْزِحَ عَنِ النَّارِ وَأُدْخِلَ الْجَنَّةَ فَقَدْ فَازَ. And this is in continuation of this verse, Kullu nafsin zaikatul maut. Quran says on the day of Qiyamah, that is the day when the results will appear before us. And these will appear before us once we die in any case. Because if our self is developed, we will start our next life at a higher pedestal. On the day of Qiyamah shall you be paid your full recompense, because that the physical part of our life will come to an end. Only he who is saved far from the fire and admitted to Jannat will have achieved success. So Jannat over here means getting the benefits of all that we have done by following the Quran. This demonstrates the importance of making correct choices willingly in the light of the guidance of the Quran. The word over here is very important, willingly. So we should be all the time aware of our choices in this life. Because what Quran does is it tells us that you should, on every crossroad of life, you should look at the Quranic values and then make a decision. And even in the man-made system, you will see that whatever path you take in the light of the Quran will always 100% produce those results which are noted in the Quran. There might be initially some losses, some difficulties, some challenges, but ultimately there is no way that you follow the correct path and the results are wrong. Correct path followed in the light of the Quran will always have correct outcomes. Physical death expanding further. Through the consciousness of death, we become aware about three things. Firstly, physical death means that this body has a finite, defined time here in the world, i.e. this body is available to our eye for a limited time. Body is recycled. Because it remains behind, it's biological, it is physical, so it is recycled. And we see this phenomena taking place around us. Billions of people have died before us, they have disappeared, and only we find some bones, etc. Most of the body just dissolves into the earth. Comprehending this intimate connection between the eye and the body is an essential part of striving on the path of Allah. Because Quran is asking us that you should develop yourself cognitively. You are given this mind, this brain free from Allah, and you should utilize it to the best of your ability. Do not constrain yourself by putting on limits your own self. Secondly, since there is a defined finite life of our body, hence we need to take full advantage of this ajal or period of respite. This term ajal has been used in the Quran at a number of places, which means the period of respite. And through the recipe of Eimaan and solid deeds, not only acquire a new life, but to take it as high as possible so that our eye enters the next phase of life at the highest possible level. This includes coming together and uniting our hearts. It's worth going through this verse few times, because what this verse says is that you should come together and hold on to the rope of Allah, which is the Quran. And then it says that before coming to the Quran, you were divided, you had conflicts, you are sitting at the edge of the pit of fire, and Allah united your hearts. Very important aspect that Quran says without the guidance of the Quran, you simply cannot get rid of your own inner divisiveness and your own prone or proclivity towards conflicts. This is not possible without making a concerted effort based on strong desire and need based on the acceptance of Eimaan. Since death ends our physical life and its time of arrival is dependent on physical laws, for example, balanced diet, exercise, environment, medical facilities of the man-made systems, conscious effort, higher aim, etc. Therefore, we need to strive to live as long as possible in good health. This is a very important point again. that what Quran is saying is that your body is the vehicle to carry your eye around. It is through your body you are going to do all these salih deeds. So looking after your body is part of this aim of your life, so that you can get the best and develop yourself to the highest possible of its development, of its nourishment, of its eminence, of its loftiness, so that you become eligible to enter into the next life at the time of death as high as possible. That is why it is important that we should not make our body suffer from smoking, from alcohol, from drugs, doing wrong things, not taking care of it properly, so that humanity can benefit from our efforts of Eimaan and salih deeds. And we check it ourselves as well, that once we have become a mu'min and come together, then how important it is to live a bit longer. Because if we look around those who are not guided by the Quran, what kind of problems they create. To counter that, to make them realize and to create a better world, we have to live a bit longer than normal. Mutually reminding is part of living life under the shadow of this law. And this presentation, for example, is about mutually reminding each other. Because once we have learned something, then we should pass it on to others. One should not get upset about it that people don't listen. But it is our duty that we tactfully, wisely, carefully pass it on to others and tell them that if you are not happy with the man-made system, there is an alternative over here. Physical death, a few more points of interest. The Quran has cast light on death in a number of verses and has recognized the uncertainty and fear created by the thought of death. That is why Quran wants us to discuss it. And that is why this presentation has been put together to remove the fear of death. Because if we know what is the higher purpose of life, and if we have prepared for the life of the hereafter and strived here and got all the signs in front of us from the Quran, then we acquire a very high level of certainty within us. All doubts and suspicions and conjectures and all those aspects, they gradually disappear. And through our efforts, we acquire that self which becomes assured of its own life in the hereafter. Being a biological entity, there is a sense of self-preservation kept within us. And we also wish to remain alive for as long as possible. And this is another very interesting point. The Quran says that you want to live forever, you want to acquire eternity. Then here is the procedure. Don't look into your physical life and through children you think that you can survive in this world so that your name is left behind. It says grow out of the biological aspect of your life, and at self's level, create a new self, create a new life within you, and you will see that how your outlook will change and how you will become useful to the system of deen, and you will become a companion of Allah. And then it says that Allah has given you life, and since He is living and He is going to, since you work at a thoughts level, once you acquire that concept of life, acquire that concept of Allah which is given in the Quran, and it becomes your model, then you will see that you will start growing. You will see the changes coming in within your own self. Your outlook will change because now your thought process is occupied that concept of Allah which is given in the Quran. And since He is Al-Hayyul Qayyum, since He is the one who gives life and He is living Himself, this will help grow yourself. The Quran has addressed both through Eimaan and salih deeds which take away all kinds of fear and grief. The important point to note is that just as by taking a pain-killing tablet a headache disappears, this path needs to be followed in order to benefit from the inner psychological change which is linked to human deeds. Very important aspect is covered in this sentence, and we should pause and reflect on this. It is not trying to understand it academically only about the Quran. Quran says you have to follow this path. You have to go out and help someone in order to understand the problems of other human beings. You should create a desire within your own self that I don't like orphans and helpless people in the world. I don't like other human beings, other innocent human beings at random being killed just for a piece of land. And then you will see that the change will come within you and you will create a desire and need that I'm going to work for the system of Deen as a companion of Allah, and then you will see that how change will come within you, how strength and power will develop within you, that determination will come, that steadfastness will come over a period of time, which will tell you that you are on the right path. And Quran repeatedly tells us that this earth and universe and every human being belongs to Allah. It is His authority, His control, His laws are working in this world. And it clearly says that if you follow the path of the Quran, you will get the results, the outcomes which are noted in the Quran. And if you do not follow the path of the Quran, then the outcomes, the results, the consequences which are noted in the Quran will also appear before you. So whether we follow His laws or do not follow His laws, its results will appear before us according to His laws. And that is a very important point for us to understand and comprehend from this presentation. For example, about Jews, the Quran has stated, وَلَا يَتَمَنَّوْنَهُ أَبَدًا بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ. And it is a plural again together. They, plural, will never desire death because of what their hands have sent forward. Very important point noted over here, that whatever we do, it has an impact on us. So if we are fearful of death, it is because we are not following the correct path. So that means conversely, if we are following the path of the Quran, the fear of death will just disappear after a few years. This is where understanding the law of requital and its functioning plays an important role. Too much emphasis on material needs also creates fear of death, because we don't want to leave this world because of our affinity towards material things which we have collected beyond our needs. Quran does not discourage us from acquiring material successes and material benefits, but it says that it should be in relation to other human beings as well. Do not accumulate only for yourself. Try to share it with others. That is why Quran says, Yuti malahu yatazakka. The one who shares his possessions, his wealth with others, he will develop his self. Because Quran is moving us from our own greed, from our own self-interest towards other human beings. It tells us continuously that other human beings are equal to yourself at self's level. A child, when it is born, it doesn't know that where it is born, who's his or her parents, what is his or her nationality, what is his or her belief system. It is just a child anywhere in the world. It is not aware of its gender, its color, its caste, its creed, its nationality, the wealth his parents possess, nothing. It's just a child. So if we are all born as equal children, the Quran is saying, then it means that you should respect each other. You should not let any child die of hunger or disease or others, and you can afford to do that. There are plenty of resources kept in this world, not only for these generations, but all the future generations as well. And Quran is helping us to distribute these equitably among yourself and also to develop yourself. So without bringing self-development into our life, we simply cannot bring peace and freedom for fear in this world. We simply cannot understand the true freedom to which the Quran is exposing us, introducing us. Because Quran says no human being has the right to rule another human being, to command another human being. Does that mean anarchy and lawlessness? It says no. You bring yourself within the permanent values of the Quran. These values are not going to change over a period of time. For the first man on planet Earth had the same values as the last man on the planet Earth. And it will be helpful if we can go through some of those permanent values which we have discussed previously. And I will leave some of the links under the description of this presentation. Fear is created by doubt and uncertainty, which are inner states of the human self, and by comparing death with our daily sleep, the Quran has put a spotlight on the link between our consciousness and our brain. There are plenty of signs for us of the life of the hereafter, and also of making this life better in the light of the Quran. It is not otherworldly. It is not a book of religion. It is not about worship and rituals. what Quran is putting forward is part of the system of deen of coming together. It defines the permanent values and explains them, and also it gives us all the divine attributes which we require for self-development, and then leaves to us to make our own decision by coming together. That is why Quran says, come together and settle your affairs through mutual consultation in the light of the Quran, and you will never ever go wrong. You will never ever have negative effects of your deeds. Another fact is noted over here, La yazukuna fiha al-mauta illa al-mauta tal-ula. And Quran says, no further tasting of death after the first death. Because we will not have this biological or physical body which is prone to death. We will have a different medium of expression. The Quran hasn't talked about it because it is something which we will find out in the next life, but we can relate to it by looking at our own self and our relationship with our body. A lot to ponder. It is about acquiring a psyche which is free from the fear of death, and see how much freedom we get if we become totally free from the fear of death once we have developed ourselves, because it is just like taking paracetamol and headache disappears. So disappearance of headache means that the paracetamol is working. This is in the physical domain. Over here, in fact, Quran is saying is that once you acquire Eimaan and do solid deeds and work together and your hearts come together, then you will see that the fear of death will disappear. Next slide is the Quran explains the reality of our existence as humans. The Quran points to our arrival in this world through a biological process, and this is given in this verse. It's worth going through this verse. And then points to the existence of ability to choose and decide by addressing it us as you. And for example, if we go through this verse, we will see that first it is talking in third person, then it comes to first person. So that means this divine energy which we have, which gives us the sense of identity, now it is capable of making choices. And then Allah tells us that if you wish to get the maximum from your life, then what you do is lejunzera man kana hayya wa yahikkal qawlu alal kafirin, that it may serve as a warning to any who wishes to be alive, that is, who wants to gain new life, and that the charge be proved against those who choose kufr and do not wish to live life under its guidance. So what this verse is saying is that there is a difference between mu'min and kafir is differentiated over here. And there are other verses as well which point to this fact that this world has been created so that you can test your own abilities, and whether you want to be a mu'min or you want to continue living as a kafir, or the one who is rejecting the higher purpose of life and is not coming to the Quran despite knowing about it. So there is a lot in the Quran which helps us to acquire new consciousness and new outlook to our life. Because just like a telescope, if we are looking with our own eyes, we can see up to a certain distance. But once we acquire a binocular or a telescope, we can look far beyond the limits imposed by our eyesight. And Quran is that telescope which helps us to not only go through all the pitfalls of this life and look at all the aspects of this life, but is also helping us to look beyond our death. Then it invites us to use our intellectual potentials to their optimum in order to come to terms with the true reality of our existence and its higher aim. It tells us that you arrived in this life through a biological process, the end of which is your physical death. However, your metacognitive manifestations point to another aspect of your invisible thought process, your memory, your decision making, and its impact on yourself. All this point to one fact, that you have far more to your life as a human being than merely an animalistic existence. So the purpose of putting this presentation together is to make us aware of our animalistic level living, and we can see plenty of it around us, and then to make us aware that we can grow out of it and look at our life in a far wider aspect of our consciousness and taking care of our hereafter as well. We are not meant to live this life miserably under fear and grief. Quran is offering us option over here and saying that you should become the companion of Allah, even if Allah is not visible, but you will see the changes which take place within your own self. From that you know that this Quran is al-haq, that is for constructive purposes, not for destructive purposes. And then Quran says that we define Sirat-e-Mustaqim, that is the straight path of the Quran towards you. Life is not cyclic. Life is a straight line. And Quran puts before us that there is no end to our life at the level of ourself. We will keep moving forward, keep evolving, because Quran says Allah is on Sirat-e-Mustaqim, that is, He Himself is in the straight path, and you follow behind Him by understanding His concept. And the changes which you will experience by following this path will become an evidence before your eyes, concrete evidence that you are on the right path. There is an accountability inbuilt in your choices and decision making. Use the Quranic guidance to get best out of this accountability aspect. And Quran says that don't be scared or fearful of the consequences of your deeds, because once you are following the Quran and doing those solid deeds which are given in the Quran, the results will always be 100%. It sums it up by stating, "Qul yuhyiha allazi ansha'aha awwala marratin wa huwa bikulli khalqin alim." Say, He will give them life who created them for the first time. Because human beings sometimes think, who is going to give us another life in the hereafter? Quran in this verse is telling you that you are nothing. You did not exist. Your previous life before being biological born was like death. You are not aware of that where you are. Because divine energy is everywhere. But this physical body is the one then helps us to display that I, that higher level of divine energy which we have got. For He is well versed in every kind of creation. What this verse 228 is conveying to us. The Quran has mentioned death before the existing life, then death after it, and then the life of the hereafter. It has called this two deaths and two lives, and about life after death, it has stated that following this, no death will become imposed. What a great achievement. True importance is only given to the question of life after death because its connection is with the law of requital. That is, every deed of ours is going to manifest its outcome, which is the reality and basis of deen. And this is the foundation stone of the divine system. We can see in the human world there is no accountability because it's all relative. The powerful do not hold themselves accountable for their deeds and as a result create mess in the world. All the accountability, all police and all these agencies are to control commoners. But once it comes to those who are rich and powerful, they are not subjecting themselves to any accountability. And we can see in today's world how all the misdemeanors and all the wrongs which these people have done at the top are coming out gradually before everyone's eyes. And this aspect is also noted in the Quran. The existing life of man becomes the issue of physics. The relationship of kufr and Eimaan is with life after death. Whichever individual is not convinced of life after death, he thinks in his own mind that in this life I can do whatever comes to mind if I make such arrangements that my crimes cannot be witnessed by anyone, and even if they are witnessed, I do not have to suffer any punishment for them, then no one can touch me. Following this, there is death, and with death, human life ends. And this is the problem we are facing in a world of 2025, because people in power think that since life will end with death, so they do not hold themselves accountable. That is why all this bombing of other human beings is going on in various parts of the world. And that is why human beings are being exploited for their work everywhere. And everyone is suffering, including women, men, and children. To whatever extent a man commits injustice and excesses, its fundamental reason is this same false assumption, i.e., denial of life in the hereafter. And see how this Eimaan in the hereafter and Eimaan in Allah and accountability brings a change within human beings. And we can imagine it, that what kind of eminent and lofty human being one will become. And then Quran says that if you become companion of Allah, since He owns this planet, He owns this universe, power will come in your direction. And there are verses on this aspect, for example, verse 24, 55. And if today deceit and immorality are becoming so widespread, then the cause for this is also denial of life in the hereafter. Because there is nothing within man which can prevent him from doing wrong. There is no conscience. Conscience is internalized society. It has nothing to do with that man is born with a conscience. Nobody is born with a conscience. We come with a plain slate. And whatever are the values of a society in which we are born, those become our conscience. Or of the law of requital, as though it has acquired the form of some doctrine. This is why the Quran emphasizes Eimaan in the life of the hereafter, because as a result of this, human society remains in a balanced state, and the selves of the individuals are also enabled so that these can traverse further evolutionary stages of life in a balanced and beautiful way. It is stated, He who created death and life, that He may provide you with an opportunity to test your own deeds, and He is the exalted in might, all protecting. See the seriousness of our life. It's a one-way street. We cannot come back to this life because the only path of coming back to this world is a biological process. Once we acquire a certain self, that's it. This self cannot be broken into pieces. We cannot pass it on to anyone else, and we have to live with it. And once we die, we enter into a higher phase of life, and the state in which we die, we will rise up exactly in the same state. If we haven't got that developed self, then we will have no developed self in the life of the hereafter. And according to the Quran, the life of the hereafter is deen already established in that part of our domain, our life. So which means that we will have no chance to come back, and we will, if we have acquired consciousness over there, that consciousness will be of no use to us because we will not be able to develop further. Now over here I've drawn this schematic on this verse. كَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَكُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا فَأَحْيَاكُمْ ثُمَّ يُمِيتُكُمْ ثُمَّ يُحْيِيكُمْ ثُمَّ إِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. I've given it different colors. First is كَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ, that how can you do kufr towards Allah who has created you. وَكُنْتُمْ, see you, أَمْوَاتًا, He gave you death, which means that there was a death before your biological existence in this world. فَأَحْيَاكُمْ, He gave you that life, that you got a physical life. Now out of that life you have to create that life which the Quran is putting forward. Now once you have got that life, you will be addressed as kum, you. That is the one who is addressing I. Now you have become responsible. So this kum is not applicable to animals because they don't have choice and intent. So this kum is very much addressed to human beings. And then it says that this kum will experience summa yumitukum, that you will die. You will experience death. You will taste death. So having tasted that death, summa yuhyikum, again you. So that you which was before death, now again that you will appear over here. Summa ilayhi turja'un. Everything you are doing in this world is going back to Allah. Quran says, wa ilallahi turja'ul umur. All what you do go back to Allah's laws. So all your accountability is on this planet. Then all these effects will show up in this kum which will appear after death. So see, we have to pause and reflect that how serious our existence on this on this planet becomes. We are held responsible for whatever we do over here, and then if we become responsible within the domain of the Quran, its value system, then there is a lot of pleasure, happiness, and certainty attached with that accountability. because through that we will develop ourselves, and that developed self will become an evidence of its own truth. No existence prior to our birth. Possibility of existence is there with all causes in place on planet Earth, including the divine energy called Ruh. This divine energy is indestructible. And Quran says Allah is everywhere, wherever you are. Huwa ma'akum aina ma kuntum. That He is with you wherever you are. And Quran is making us conscious of His presence, that is, conscious of our higher purpose of life, conscious of our companionship with Him, conscious of our covenant with Him, that is to follow His path, and conscious of our own accountability. Biological birth through a physical process, born with biological life, possessing choice and intent, that is a self. The verse addresses you, i.e., or I. This is tangible life where consciousness exists and one is aware of the body and cognitive abilities. So that means we should be alive to our feelings, our emotions, our intellectual abilities, our body, and what is going on within our body, and how we are living our physical life and also of our cognitive life. And one is aware of the body and cognitive abilities. So this is tangible life where consciousness exists and one is aware of the body and cognitive abilities. Here, the Quran invites us to question this stage of our life. How can you declare kufr of this life of yours? Because if you are doing kufr, you are denying your own I, you are denying your own self. You are saying that I do not exist. Relate it to Allah to know the higher purpose of your creation as human beings. And in one verse, Quran does say that those who forgot about Allah, and Allah made them forget their own self. This is something very, very exciting as well as needing our profound reflection. That if we forget about Allah, then we forget about our higher purpose of life. So the concept of Allah given in the Quran is a life-giving concept. And we have to be dissatisfied with this life which is not guided by the Quran, and come to the Quran and get its guidance, and then see how the new life changes everything within us and in the sphere in which we are functioning in this world. Two ways to live this life, i.e. two choices. One way is to follow own unbridled desires and live by the chaotic consequences of it, with death awaiting at the end. The second choice is to live life within the values defined by Allah in His book, live life devoid of fear and huzn, and then taste death, and then enter into the next stage of life. Physical death simply cannot be avoided. It is 100%. Human beings can try any method. We can prolong it. Maybe we can live for 150 years. But what is the point of living 150 years which has no life after death for us? It's a waste of time. All the troubles, all the difficulties, all the miseries which we live in a man-made world, and never try anything to counter it, to make this world a better world. What is the point of that living? Hence, its seriousness needs to be grasped, for which intellect is provided to all of us. This verse points to four distinct states of human consciousness in this journey of life. Death-like, then biological life plus choice-based life, then either tasting death or ending it, then death with consciousness suspended, then final life, all this under the shadow of divine laws. All this is comprehensible if related to the Quran. We go to the next slide. Death is universal and part of the human physical makeup. And I have drawn this bar chart over here in which it is shown that human life is 100%. Not less, not more, precisely 100%. The day we die, we know we are not coming back to this physical world. We should not hasten the death of others, need to think through all the contributing factors. And we can see how people are at randomly killing other human beings for a piece of land. And that piece of land, every one of us is going to leave behind once we die. only I goes forward, all mine is left behind. And secondly, all of us are going to die. Why should I hasten the death of another equal human being? Let him live. Not only we should let them live, but we should enjoy their company. This is what Quran is asking us. Irrespective of color, creed, language, nationalities in which we have divided ourselves, and all the problems which we have created under the man-made systems, all should disappear because we are all equal. Because the day I was born, I was equal to any other child in the world. And that equality, no human being simply can deny, can take it away. And there is a player in that being equal. Languages and our faces and our colors, our genders, these are for identity. Man or woman are different because they have a different biological roles. Otherwise, they are equal in self. All our efforts, successes, and sufferings should lead to positive results for us, must not end with our physical death. And another thing we should keep in mind, that when we enhance the death of somebody else, that means we are depriving them of a chance of self-development. That means having understood the process and procedure of self-development and its importance and its impact on the life of the hereafter, because life at the self level is one continuity. We should provide maximum chance to others so that they can also develop their potentials, so that this life becomes full of pleasure, free from fear and grief, and we go on to the next life as one humanity who enjoyed their life over here fully and then went over to the next life. So this is something which we should pause and reflect, and pause and reflect, and pause and reflect till we get the gist of it. By virtue of possessing a self, that is I, based on divine energy, we need to figure out the reality of human creation and its higher purpose, grow out of animalistic existence as soon as possible. We simply do not understand the pleasure which is implicit, which is hidden by following the path of Allah and growing out of the animalistic level of living. The pleasures which are associated with this non-animalistic life, living at a self level, are simply cannot be imagined, cannot be felt at a level of living life at the animalistic level. Of course, we can understand by using the Quran, we can understand the animalistic life as well. And Quran says that you should enjoy your physical life, but that physical life becomes multiplied when we have that self which is called Mu'min by the Quran, which becomes at peace with itself and also understands of giving peace to others. So next slide is schematic, looking back at the earthly life from the hereafter. So what I've done over here is that in the light of the Quran, I've looked at the life in the hereafter and then casting a glance on the life as we approach our hereafter. The life in the hereafter, the state of self before death, and that, as I said earlier, that whatever we have become just before death, we will be rising up, waking up, just like our sleep. When we go to sleep at night, we get up in the morning exactly in the same state of mind with which we had slept the previous night. So state of self before death will be Mu'min plus Muttaqi, that is, have acquired Eimaan and lived our life with solid deeds and have developed ourself. Choice and intent, fully aware. So we will still have that choice and intent which is built within our self. No gender, non-biological. Because Quran has very clearly said that man and woman are equal at self's level. They just have a biological role in this world, which means there is no need for that biological world in the hereafter, because hereafter life is at the level of that developed self. And then there is no death as well over there. So it points to this non-biological existence. And another point, sometimes people think that they would like to be biological over there And Quran says that if you have become a mu'min, then you will get whatever you wish. So if we still want to have a biological self in the hereafter, then we can get it. But do we want to be again man and woman in the hereafter rather than going out to the higher plane of our existence? So we should try to grow out of our biological existence right in this world once we have become a mu'min and gone on to treading on Sirat-e-Mustaqim, a straight path which the Quran is putting forward before us. And these things become very clear once we have acquired a developed self of a fairly high level of development or a higher rank we have achieved, and in the light of the Quran. No death, that is new medium for expression. We don't know what kind of a medium of expression we will get, because Quran says that you cannot understand the life of the hereafter at your present level of existence. But there are certain aspects which Quran relates to this world and says that this is the way that life will be, that you will have that blissful life and happy life which will be free from all kinds of fears and griefs. All desires plus more. And Quran says that no eye, if you're following this path, then nobody knows that what kind of pleasures of life are kept for you, and you will get whatever you desire. So here is a very important point, that whatever you desire, you will get. So that means our desires right in this life should grow out of just the biological pleasures of life, and we should start aspiring for something at a very high consciousness level. Further evolution of the self will take place, and Quran does not say that that hereafter will end. It says Khalidun, which means that you will continue your life, and you will keep evolving over different stages of your life progressively. And of course, you will be in the company of all those who have also become mu'mineen. Eternal, there will be no fear and grief, and there will be no fear of death. And there will be a companionship as well. And the beauty of this companionship is, as I said earlier in the light of the Quran, that once your hearts become united here, right here, Quran says that you should grow out of your biological relationships and become mu'mineen, and then experience the pleasure of coming together and that unity of hearts where your ideology becomes one, and with Allah as your companion. So this is something which we need to pause and reflect again and again in the light of the Quran. And as we study the Quran, individually as well as collectively, we should pause and reflect again and again that what Quran is telling us, what kind of consciousness and breadth of outlook which the Quran is putting before us. Further exploration and creation, that will be part of it. That life will not be a life of stagnancy and just sitting over there and doing nothing, because Quran wants us to explore all the possibilities of life in different stages of our existence. And our mind, which we have now, our consciousness, which we now have associated with our I, has no limits defined by the Quran. This will keep expanding. Higher aim of life, of course, the strong desire to explore the furthest regions of the universe after our death. All those questions which we have while we are existing physically in this world, we should keep them ready to be answered in our next stage of our life, in our next journey, or the continuation of journey of our life at self's level. And of course, there is no more death. Looking back, life before death, and this is where we left this world. Earthly life, body plus self, balanced approach in the light of the Quran. And here we are, and we grow out of it. And of course, all those who become mu'mineen will continue their journey together in the life of the hereafter. All these biological affinities and relationships will end with death, and that will be the journey of ourself. Looking for guidance, or in this path, we will remember over here sitting that when exactly did we come to the Quran. Accepting Eimaan, and I've just quoted one verse over here, we can add more to it. Eimaan plus solid deeds After getting this guidance, after accepting this Eimaan, then we start on this path, and every deed of ours then becomes saleh, because some aspects of our latent potentials manifest, and we know now we have acquired something new. Inner need to join Mu'mineen, and this is something very important for us to understand, that if we have accepted this Eimaan and that inner need and desire hasn't been created within us, then we should go back to the Quran and check our Eimaan again and again till we have acquired that desire and need to work with other Mu'mineen. And if we are working with them and we haven't developed that strong affinity with each other, that means we need to make more effort. Self-development, values plus attributes, that is within the permanent values and divine attributes, that means we should start learning about them. Continuing joint effort, aim is rububiyat, and that is another very important point because it serves as a signpost for our self-development. Develop self ready for hereafter. Whether at this stage of our life, that is finite life on this planet Earth, we have been able to establish the system of deen or not, by coming together and uniting our hearts, one thing is absolutely clear, that we have become a mu'min, and now is a time to leave this world because our physical body is coming to an end. For example, we can be suffering from cancer with some terminal problem, heart attack, or maybe some accident or something. It is a possibility because our physical body is following physical laws and the man-made system. But our aim is that in whatever condition we are near our death, we should be mu'min and muttaqi, so that we rise up at that higher level of life, as some of the signs are noted over here. And Quran says, Muhammadun Rasulullah wallazina ma'ahu ashidda'u alal kuffari ruhma'u bainahum. So this is one sign of it. Wa'adallahu allazina amanu wa amilu salihati minhum maghfiratan wa ajran azima. And it is translated as Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the messenger of Allah. And this is for that time, but over here we can see that how the Quran is pointing to this direction, that once you come together, create a Jamaat, what it means in terms of self-development. And those who are with him are strong against the kuffar, compassionate among each other. So over here we should remember that this kufr means those who are creating problems in the world. The system of deen emerges in the world with a view to relieve mankind from the man-made system and its problems. Allah has promised those who have Eimaan and do solid deeds, protection and a great reward. And we should also look at this verse 24:55 in connection with this statement of the Quran. And then Quran says, the Quran places all of this within our reach, even under the man-made systems. And this is something which we should take from today's presentation, please, that Allah hasn't abandoned this world. The only issue we have is to understand the procedure and the process of getting help from Allah, that is getting power in the land. And because whole system of the universe belongs to Allah, so Allah is saying that despite not being visible, He is, inverted commas, visibly working in the world if we look at the Quran. So Quran provides us the medium through which we can understand the laws of Allah and get power in the land. It states, La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wusaha laha ma kasabat wa layha maktasabat. On no self does Allah place a responsibility greater than it has the potential to deliver, that is as per our choice. So what Quran is saying is that whatever is given in the Quran, all of this is achievable if you follow this path, and it will help to expand your vision, expand your consciousness, and you will be able to understand the man-made system and its finer details. And you will also understand the system of deen as put forward by the Quran. And you will understand all the aspects which are covered in the Quran, come together and see that the expanse and the vastness which you achieve through the Quran, it will add to your strength, to your power, and you will be able to establish the system of deen, because you will acquire that patience, steadfastness, that resoluteness, that determination which is required to establish this system and then sustain it and add strength to it. And if you will establish that system, because Allah has said that this system is bound to come in your word at some point in time, and why not this time? Why not within our finite lifetime? And it is possible. There are examples given in the Quran of various messengers where the system did get established during their lifetime. It gets every good that it earns, and it suffers every ill that it earns. Understand it through self-development. So our job is to do maximum righteous deeds so that the promise of Allah can be fulfilled with our generation. Next slide is, here is something to pause and reflect. Choice is ours. Only Allah offers us an alternative to all man-made systems through His book, and then explains to us the immense and eternal reward of making this choice in this life and for the life of the hereafter. And Quran says, وَمَا كَانَ لِنَفْسٍ أَن تَمُوتَ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ كِتَابًا مُؤَجَّلًا وَمَنْ يُرِدْ ثَوَابَ الدُّنْيَا نُؤْتِهِ مِنْهَا وَمَنْ يُرِدْ ثَوَابَ الْآخِرَةِ نُؤْتِهِ مِنْهَا وَسَنَجْزِي الشَّاكِرِينَ. Nor can a self die, that is, taste it, except as per the law of Allah. This is explained as a law. And then it says, if any do desire a reward of this life, we shall give it to him. If any do desire a reward in the hereafter, we shall give it to him. And swiftly shall we reward those who bring out their potentials. And Quran says, through shukr. Shukr means to display all our latent potentials, all our abilities, all our work in the outer world. And Quran says, if it is in line with the Quranic value system, then you are bound to get the good results of it. So over here, Quran is saying that this death of yours follows a certain law. And once you have gone through the time of respite, which you are getting in your finite life, then you will be rewarded for what you have done. This is at an individual level, but collectively it is saying that if you come together and follow laws of Allah, then you will get the benefits of this life as well as of the life of the hereafter. Here is the result of following the path of deen. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. The people who die in the path of the divine system. And this is another beautiful verse which gives that certainty to those who are striving on this path. Because Quran says death is going to come to you. Whether you die while fighting in the path of Allah, if there is a fight, for example, if there is an opposition to the establishment of system and it comes to that fighting, you are going to die in any case. But the rewards which are associated with this striving on the path of Allah are infinite. Never ever think that they have died. Their death is eminent life. Because they have already acquired eminent life, that is why they have willingly gone into the fight. So Quran says that don't be fearful of death. You are going to die at some point in time. But make this death as something with which you can rise to that level of existence where the moment you die, you rise in the other world. If you have acquired that self, that eminent self, that loftiness. And does not mean over here from this verse that only fighting will do that. What Quran is saying is that in your own mind, you should make a covenant with Allah. That is why, for example, Surah Tawbah, Quran says that in verse 111, that you should sell your life and possessions in the hands of Allah. That is for the establishment of this system by coming together. And then see how you will get rewarded for that. Those are the eternal rewards, the immense rewards. They have all the means for further evolution of life available to them from their Rabb. And see over here in the Rabbihim Yurzakun. And we know that the meaning of rizq is those means of sustenance. And it includes both means of sustenance, physical as well as those which are required for self-development. So Quran is over here saying that The Rab is, we know, associated with our self-development, for physical as well as self-development. Both aspects are covered under Rububiyat. That is why Allah has called himself Rabbil Alameen, that he is the Rabb of all times and all parts of the universe or universes, whatever it is. And Quran says Rabb means that when Allah created anything, it also fixed its point of destination. For example, for a mango tree to bear mangoes is its rububiyat, it is its aim. For a goat to become a goat is its aim of life, should I say. And for human beings, there is no end to it. Its human life will continue beyond death because human beings have choice and intent. And in fact, in one verse, Quran says that universe has been created for this specific purpose, for constructive purpose, so that each human being is recompensed for whatever it does in this life, and nobody is treated unjustly. So it is us, we as human beings, who are putting a meaning to this universe. Just imagine if none of us is around, if I am not delivering this presentation, and none of us is around, only animals are roaming around this earth, this universe is meaningless. It is we human beings who are putting a meaning to it. So Quran is saying that while you are putting a meaning to it, you should put that meaning to it which Quran has presented to you. Because this is first stage of your life, and if you create new life, you can then put a higher purpose to your life, and you will go on to the next life as well, and you will become companion of Allah to progress through next destination. And since this destination is never going to end, you will continue going forward. And over here I will quote a verse from Surah Najm, and Quran says, "Wa anna ila rabbikal muntahaha," that your destination should be going towards that of this rububiyat, that is, keep developing yourself, keep following the laws of Allah, keep following him, because Quran says that your Rabb is also on Sirat-e-Mustaqim. And the next verse is, then Allah shares their impressions about the hereafter with us. Farahina bima atahumullahu min fadlihi wa yastabshiruna billazina lam yalhaqu bihim min khalfihim Allah khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. They feel very pleased on witnessing their lofty statuses which they receive from Allah, and from this awareness that through their sacrifice such a society has been established for those people who are still in the world, in which they are free from fear and grief, their happiness becomes multiplied. And this is a beautiful verse which gives glad tidings to all of us who are on this path. Quran is saying is that these people who have left this world as a result of striving on this path, whether through any fighting, and if there hasn't been any fighting, then through a not normal physical death. And because of their highly developed self, they know that they managed to establish the system of deen. And if the system of deen is not established yet before they leave this world, that is, their life is cut short, they know that there are enough Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen over there who will be able to establish this system. And with this happy feelings of pleasure and joy and euphoria, they leave this world. And they know, because the whole aim is that to establish the system which is free from khawf and huzn, that is external fear, and from internal anxiety and any kind of depression and uncertainty. And then Quran says in the next verse, then it is summed up by stating, يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ بِنِعْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ فَضْلٍ وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And they are extremely happy because they know that all these good things of life, all these prosperities and successes are coming from Allah wa fadlin. And fadl over here means abundance, economic prosperity, and of course all the aspects which are related to human self as well as human body are available for that. Because once we follow this path, then these are bound to come. And they are very sure, وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, that once mu'mineen. Again, it is a plural thing that the mu'mineen, once they start working on this path, then they are bound to come it. They become eligible for it. It is through their own efforts they have achieved it. And this is that Jannat, it is that paradise, nobody can take it away. Right, in this world, we know it that if, for example, somebody has acquired the qualification of a doctor, even if they have lost all their degrees, that ability of being a doctor, that qualification, simply nobody can take it away. And over here, Quran says that once you follow this path after Eimaan and solid deeds, because this Jannat is based on your own deeds, nobody can take it away, because this is the way Allah has designed, planned, and made this system. And Allah wants us to do that because this is the aim of human creation, that they should create new life within them indirectly. Allah could have created the next stage of our life himself, but that wouldn't have been what we are doing it. Over there, he would have created new life within us and he would have given us choice and intent. He might have already done it in some other part of the universe, but over here in planet Earth, this is the way he has created, that we create our own inner life at a self's level by using this planet Earth and by using other human beings, by interacting with them and by working together under the permanent values and by following the divine attributes. And if we look at these three verses in an inverse order, that this is what mu'mineen are, and then go back, we can figure it out that how powerful is the guidance of the Quran in terms of helping us and making it clear that don't be despondent, don't despair. If you have the Quran, you will succeed. Just keep following it. Don't worry about it, how the power will come in your direction. Don't be scared of the Pharaohs and Hamans and Karuns of the world. It is not your problem. Once you follow this path, just keep following it and don't give up. Allah will never ever let you down. And finally, summing up the positive side of the specter of death. We have seen through the study of the Quran so far that there is a very comprehensive program of human self-development, the outline of which is laid out clearly in the Quran. And Quran starts with this verse, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, that is with the attribute of Allah, which encompasses all attributes, all divine attributes are included in it. And then it says Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, that the nourishment and the development of human beings and of course all other creations are the responsibility of Allah. And there is a program of Rahman ar-Rahim which is explained in the Quran from beginning to the end, and you should become part of it. So we should try to become part of that program of Allah which is explained and put forward in the Quran, and then we will be on a different plane of existence right in this world, and not to be fearful of any man-made system, because now we are working in the program of Allah for which the universe and all of us have been created. And he makes sure that his program will never ever fail if we are working as his partner, as part of this program. This program encompasses every aspect of the physical as well as the life at self's level. Nothing is left out, and with this in mind, we are going through it in detail. Death is not presented as a punishment. We should keep it in mind, please, that death is not a punishment for a moment. Death is just end of the first phase of this life, earthly phase of this life for the physical body. Physical body has done its job. It helped us to develop ourselves. And then we move on to the next life. But as the event in which marks the end of one phase of life and the beginning of the next stage of life. It means that up to our death, we need to study the program of Allah related to this worldly life. This is the aim of this platform, that whoever is interested to partake in this aspect can take advantage of it. It is a collective program of Allah. On this platform, we are helping each other to come to terms with the importance of our own self and to enhance the value of our own self by following the guidance of the Quran. Because without the Quran, we have certain intrinsic value of ourselves. But after coming to the Quran, we increase its value to a very new heights. And that value, once we have acquired, will become an evidence in itself that we have become mu'min, we have become muttaqi, and now we can move on to the next stage of our life together by uniting our hearts and then working and striving on this with total devotion so that we can get the power from Allah. In verse 228, the Quran has pointed to the continuity of life and has invited us to pause and reflect, to look at each stage of our existence intellectually and then reason it using the Quranic light. By making us aware about the existence of the law of requital, we are invited to live our life by becoming highly conscious of our thoughts and deeds so that we enjoy this life free from all kinds of fears, and it includes that of the death, and strive together to eliminate all kinds of anxieties, stresses, worries, vulnerabilities. Because Quran wants us to become free from all chains which are imposed by man-made systems. For example, false beliefs, false concepts, false assumptions, superstitions, all kinds of fears created by man-made systems. Because human beings who are in power, they are bound to create fears in order to subjugate fellow human beings. And they create these fears to accumulate power, to accumulate wealth for a paltry benefits, and they have no Eimaan, no thought of the higher purpose of life. That is why they are quite happy to bomb others, kill others, whereas they all know that they are going to die themselves. So it's a horrendous psychological disabilities with which these people are suffering. And as a result, common man's life is full of fear, full of anxieties, full of huzn, depression, grief, all kinds of worries, and then over and above the fear of death. So all those who have come to the Quran, they should make it their aim that they will devote the rest of their life after accepting Eimaan willingly through free volition. Because Quran says any Eimaan under compulsion is not Eimaan. Because then with that Eimaan we cannot draw those benefits which are associated with the true Eimaan in Allah and His book. Thanks for your time for watching and listening it today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.